The squat is the unrivaled king of all strength training exercises. There's no other movement that is going to provide you the biggest bang for your buck on every level. If you were to come into the gym and you were only allowed to do one movement, the squat would be your very best choice. A good squat begins with an effective, efficient, and solid setup. One of the most common mistakes that you'll see in gyms across the country, even at powerlifting meets, and amongst anybody that is actually squatting, is far too often people will rush their setup. Everybody's in a big hurry to run up to the bar, grab the bar, get up underneath the bar, and walk out of the rack as fast as they possibly can, sit down, stand up, and get it over with. I understand that the weight on your back is heavy, that it's uncomfortable, the whole time under tension principle, you don't want to be under tension any longer than you have to be. However, what I'm going to show you in this tutorial is the exact setup that we use with all of our athletes, our general population clients, our power lifters, weightlifters, anybody that comes through these doors, we teach this exact setup to, and I can guarantee you that if you clean up your setup, you can almost instantaneously add 10 kilograms to your squat. The lineage, as far as where this exact setup came from, is I learned it from Captain Kirk Karwoski, who handed it down to my wife Susie. The three of us all employ an identical setup. Wade Hooper and Jason Beck, they also employ an almost identical approach to this. It is by far the most effective and efficient setup that we have found, and it'll absolutely work for anybody who wants to squat heavier weights more effectively. Susie's going to go ahead and demonstrate what most people do. They get up underneath the bar, and before the weight has even stopped moving, they're already walking back.
80 on the bar. Get your attitude on here.
Come on, Susie.
Let's go, Susie.
Come on, Susie.
Tight core. Good, strong setup.
Tight gut. Chest up.
Go, Susie.
Okay, so now you just saw that world record squat, and I decided to use my wife again as a guinea pig because, well, she's pretty strong. So anyhow, Susie is going to go ahead and she's going to turn around and she's going to go ahead and set this up and actually do a rep. But I just want you to see the setup in its entirety from this back view. Okay, obviously it goes without saying that the very first thing you're going to do when you approach the bar is set your grip. So Susie's going to walk up to the bar here. The key about setting your grip is you want to get your hands as close together as possible. That is going to be dictated by three things. Obviously, how wide you are, how big you are as a person. Okay, Brad Gillingham is going to grab the bar a lot wider than my wife Susie. That's number one. Number two is the mobility and the flexibility that you have in both your wrists and your shoulders. If you have a shoulder issue or a wrist issue, you're not likely to be able to get your hands super close. And the third is how low you're able to carry the bar on your back, which again kind of ties into number two. So as you can see, Susie's grabbing the bar. As she's grabbing the bar, she is literally death gripping the bar. You need to leave your fingerprints on the bar, squeeze the bar as tight as you possibly can, like your life depends on it. The harder you squeeze the bar, the more you're going to ignite your central nervous system and the more muscles you're going to bring to the party. Okay? So Susie's grabbed the bar. That is step number one. Step number two is actually getting underneath the bar. Susie's already set her grip. She's got her hands in close. She's squeezing the bar as tight as possible. Now as she gets underneath the bar, you'll notice Susie is pulling her shoulder blades together as she gets under the bar, and she's going to place the bar pretty low on her back, which is usually for most people about an inch below the top of their rear deltoids. And literally, she is grabbing the bar and trying to pull the bar down across her back. Okay, as if she's going to break the bar across her shoulders. Once she's got everything tight, her feet are approximately shoulder width or hip width Her head is in the upward position. She is then going to get some air, tighten her entire body, and stand up. Step number 3 is actually walking out with the weight and taking our steps. Susie set her grip. She's got her hands as close together as she possibly can. She just stood up. Now what she's going to do is she's going to take a 3-step approach. If you watch her feet, her first step is a drag step back. It doesn't matter if you step with your right foot or your left foot. It's whichever one is comfortable for you. Your second step actually sets 1 foot of your stance. And then the third and final step sets the last part of your stance. Now you're back there, your feet are set, and if you need to make micro adjustments, you can, but you're not back there dancing around like a cat in a litter box. Ideally, you want your feet to be as symmetrical as possible. Folks, you're never going to get your feet as symmetrical as possible, but you want them to be as even as they possibly can. Now, Susie is almost ready to squat. We have found the 3-step approach to a walkout to be by far the safest and the most efficient. The next logical question is, if the 3-step is so good, why not cut it down to 2 steps? We're going to show you why a 2-step walkout is not favorable. Susie's going to set her feet a little bit wider because her first step actually has to do 2 things. It has to separate her from the rack. If you notice, she clipped the rack there on the left side, and then she had to take a very big step to get her other foot set. The problem is there, Susie, you can go ahead and rack it. The problem is with this is that Susie has to step back, and her first step has to be too far, so it leaves her exposed, okay? We've only got 40 kilos on the bar, which is no big deal, but when you've got your max weight, you don't want to be stepping any further than you have to. We're going to take a look at the 3-step approach from the side, and I want you to see what happens. Her first step clears her from the rack. Now she's cleared. Her second one sets her stance, and her third one sets her stance. Then Susie can go ahead and wiggle, and now as you can see, Susie's got a pretty symmetrical stance with her feet just about perfect. Again, you're never going to get them perfect, but they're pretty even. So the 3-step walkout is much more efficient than the 2-step because the 2-step actually leaves you very vulnerable. During your setup, there are 2 very important times at which you need to stop and let the weight settle. The first of which is when you break the bar from the rack, okay? Far too many people stand up and they start stepping back before they've even let the weight settle. The weight is moving all over the place, they're very unstable, okay? Now what you've done is you've put forces on the bar that weren't there before, and you've made 40 kilos feel like 80 kilos, okay? The second place where you need to stop and let the weight settle is once you do your 3-step approach and you get back here, right before you go, that's when you take your second breath of air, you literally retighten every single muscle in your body, you're like a time bomb waiting to explode, you're as tight as can be, and at that point you let the weight settle as well. You don't want to get back there and just immediately start to squat. Susie is now going to go ahead and demonstrate, and you can see the 2 very distinct points at which she stops and lets the weight settle. Again, it's only for about a second. She let it settle. Now she's stepping back. She's squeezing. She gets her air. Now she's going to squat it. While Susie is in deep thought and sitting there looking beautiful, we're going to go over some of the finer points of the setup where things could actually go wrong. We want to dot every I, cross every T, and cover all of our bases. There's 5 things that I want to bring to your attention. The first of which being some people set up with their feet actually split. Susie's going to get under the bar and show you how some people set their feet. Okay? Some people have their feet split. That is a no-no because you're going to be incredibly unstable. Okay? You want to have your feet side by side. Susie's going to show that right now. Put your feet in the right position. Susie's got her feet in the right position. Okay? That is ideal. They are approximately shoulder or hip width. That's the right spot. You'll also see some people set up with their feet actually behind them. Like that. Now I want you to look at Susie's body position. She's in a forward lean, and now she has to arch and essentially do a good morning just to get the weight out of the rack. Go ahead and show us, Susie. Yeah, that's already putting her in an incredibly vulnerable position. Now that we showed you proper foot position and how important it is to have your feet side by side and your feet under the bar when you break the bar from the rack, we're going to cover 3 of the other 5 points. The first of which being is head position. It is absolutely imperative that you get your head up when you break the bar from the rack, okay? When you do walk back, sure, you can glance and drop your eyes down to watch your feet. But in the beginning, you need to get your head up. If your head is not up at the start, when you break the bar from the rack, you're not going to magically walk back there and be able to get your head and your upper back and torso in the right position, especially with max weight on your back. So Susie's going to get underneath the bar, and I want her to show us what it looks like with her head down. Okay? Now you can see already that Susie's already hunched over, she's looking forward, and she's in a bad position. Rack it. Now I want Susie to get underneath, and she's going to go ahead and do it the right way, and she's actually going to walk back with it. Her head is up, she breaks, lets it settle, she's going to do her steps. Now we're going to talk about elbow position very quickly because we don't want to keep Susie there. Some people have their elbows up. Susie's going to show us. Look what happens to the bar. I don't know if you noticed that. As soon as Susie picks the bar up, her elbows up, the bar rolls onto her upper back, and now she's hunched even more. So you want to pull your elbows down as much as possible and under you. And the very last thing that we want to talk about is the glutes. Right before you go, you want to make sure that your glutes, your butt, is clenched and tight, okay? Show us a loose butt, Susie. Okay, there you go. Now, if you notice, that puts her in a bad position with her glutes under her, okay? She literally has her legs under her and her body, her bones are supporting the weight. Now she's ready to squat. She lets the weight settle again, and Susie's going to do a rep for us.